That was the famous Passion Chorale from the St. Matthew Passion by Bach. The text, "When I one day shall depart, then part not from me. When I must suffer death, then come to my side. When I am most afraid in my heart, then save me from those fears by virtue of your fear and pain." This is the response that the chorus representing the congregation sings when Jesus finally expires on the cross. Not a response of self-abnegation and guilt, but one of desire for union. Now that you're facing death, allow us to have your closeness when we have to go through the same thing at some point. I'm Tom Lloyd, and I have the joy of conducting the St. Matthew Passion for the first time in my career on April 3rd with the Bucks County Choral Society and with an incredible group of soloists, the Riverside Sinfonia, and in Our Lady of Mount Carmel Church in Doylestown, which is one of the most perfect places to perform sacred music for chorus and orchestra that I've ever experienced. It's really a special place. We're doing some videos to give you some living program notes, some insight into the music. For me, exploring this music really in depth for the first time, having only studied it before outside of preparing for a performance, I have some of the same reactions that you might have approaching it as a listener if you're not familiar with it. That is, both being drawn to it because of its being known as such a great work, and at the same time being somewhat intimidated by it. It lasts about 3 hours, so it's a long work. It's complex, has many layers, and sometimes when we hear of especially in classical music, of great musical icons, we think of them as something that is good for us. We should know them, we should be exposed to them, and be able to talk about it later, but not necessarily something that we would enjoy and take pleasure in participating in. The whole purpose of these videos is to make you feel otherwise, that this music is very approachable, and that through a little bit of exposure, of listening, of being aware of some of the history, you don't need a graduate degree in order to get more and more out of this piece every time you hear it. A live performance of this work is particularly special because a live performance of a great work like the Bach St. Matthew Passion is like going to a museum, and instead of the picture just sitting there on the wall, the painter comes in and paints it for you in front of your eyes. Now, Bach won't be at our concert in person, but we will be recreating his work, and though we will be putting hours of preparation into that, and we'll be showing you some of those videos as well, there's no telling exactly what will happen at that moment, and there's something very special about people gathering together around a work like this to experience it in person, in the moment, unamplified, in a beautiful acoustic space, and with a sense of anticipation and excitement in the air. The music itself, even though we think of it as being iconic and having been around forever, actually took a long time to come into the public consciousness. Now, Bach was a church musician. He had a church job. Now, it was a little bit more elaborate than some church jobs. When he wrote the Passion, he was in his final position as director of music in the town of Leipzig, which meant more than one church was involved. But he was a classic overachiever, like many of the great artists, Michelangelo, Da Vinci, many others who went far beyond the expectations of their role and of what was expected of them at the time. Bach's St. Matthew Passion was written fairly early during that period in Leipzig in 1729, and it was performed a few times in his lifetime, and then went into a period of relative obscurity where, as far as we know, there were no performances from Bach's death in 1750 until Felix Mendelssohn, the great composer and conductor, revived it in 1829, almost 80 years after his death. This led to a revival of interest in Bach's music generally, and today you can find it on YouTube, on iTunes. Very accessible, some great performances on YouTube. In fact, we will have links to them on the website, the same one that you linked to for this video, so that you can get to know this music by not only hearing it, but seeing performers actively engaged in it. So this music has stood the test of time, and it's done that not just because of its intellectual vigor and its formal complexity, but because the music, just as the chorale that you just heard, is deeply, deeply moving, and has spoken to people through many different times and eras. And if it wasn't for the music itself being so moving, people would not keep coming back to it. In particular, Bach's St. Matthew Passion touches us with its story of personal sacrifice for others that has the power to kindle human love in return. For Christians, this is the love of God for humankind, as shown through the sacrificial death of Jesus of Nazareth. But people outside the Christian tradition as well have also been moved by the vivid expression of the human experience of transformational love, of the power of giving oneself for others. In a culture that's increasingly focused on individual achievement, where we're racked by religious, cultural, and political polarization between opposite sides, where it's winner take all and worldly success is the main criteria of happiness. It is this artistic realization of the power of sacrificial love that draws people of many backgrounds to this very special music. And I hope you'll find these short videos to be a helpful introduction, and I hope we'll see you on April 3rd at Our Lady of Mount Carmel Church at 7:30. Thank you.